Welcome to Kitchen Conversations. Today I have somebody who is just like drinking a cup of coffee, and it so happens his name is Joe. Welcome to the show, Joe Visconti.
Glad to be here with my grace, my cup of grace, actually.
Well, every time I talk to you, you give me ideas that I walk away with that I have to think about for a long time. So when we were thinking about who would be another interesting person to interview who's snappy, who's got their pulse, finger on the pulse beat of geopolitics, who has real experience to back it up, and da 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 has studied the works of Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah.
So today I'm going to kind of subtitle this show um, Morning Joe Questions and Answers. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Boy, am I excited. I got to tell you, yes, for all those politicians who may see this and realize that I'm an anthroposophist, my mother found Rudolf Steiner in the one of the libraries for the priests back in 1972, and we've been into Steiner since then. A lot of years. How many years is that? 50 years? This year's? Oh yeah, 50 years.
Wow.
Wow. And
Yeah, and
we
you and Barnwell oftentimes give me a call, and we have a three-way conversation where we actually attempt to antidote the evil of the world. Last time we talked, whenever that was, recently, you made some amazing comments to me that I couldn't get out of my mind. It's like watching Tower 7 fall. It's just a matter, the bombs have been set off. It's a matter of a controlled demolition. Is it going to lean a little to the left, to the right? It's not a question of whether it's falling. And I'm talking about Western civilization. And really, I'm going to fire a bunch of questions at you today because these are very short. Once we do this, I am certain that my director, producer, and boss will have us do something that will also be a video so that people can see who you are as well as hear what you have to say. But you always have answers to every question. And so I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What do you think's going on in Zelensky land, Ukraine? What do you think's going on there? What can you tell people that, by the way, since you are an anthroposophist, feel free to go as far into the weeds as you want, saying anything spiritual you want, because that's what people are asking us to do in these Substack conversations. So, what do you think about Ukraine?
Well, it's the land of Christ, the earth of Christ, and that's the thing that you really can't talk about in the political world. They wouldn't understand or comprehend that whole region right in there, how vital is for the sixth epoch and what's coming and what's in the land now. And it goes all the way down. If you look at the map, it goes all the way down to Israel, and is a very holy place. It's amazing to see that this world that we're living in right now, it's making it's graduating. Whoever's going to stay back is going to stay back. But I'm working also with a group that's looking to do the Live Aid people from the 1980s. We think we've been funded with tens of millions of dollars to do Live Aid concerts across the 6 continents to support the human beings, not the political ammunition, but the human beings that have been not just displaced, killed, and are going to be killed in this thing. It's called the Festival of Hope. I'll tell you more about that in another Substack or on a phone call. But I believe that contrary to what we want to talk about politically, Trump could have done this, Putin would have done that, and all the things we already know. For me, it just seems like wherever Christ is strong and powerful in his love, that you'll see conflict. Just it's like something beautiful always wants to be destroyed. You got a great restaurant you love and it closes. All these things that you love in life seem to always get attracted to hate or destruction. It's just part of something we don't comprehend or really understand why they're and I felt that in Jerusalem when I was there for the moving of the embassy for a week. I drove all over Israel, and you just felt the love in the land. And I assume that I will feel the same if I ever get to Ukraine, if it's ever peaceful. That I could not get Israel or Jerusalem out of my mind. It's the place of these holy events. And when I came home to Connecticut, even my friends that I was to this day 4 years ago, we still can feel and imagine the land. There's something about Christ over Israel and over that region that affects people. And I just think the antithesis of hate, and I won't talk about these dark force names this morning, but they're making their rise at this time. And so It's I think the conflict is going to increase this winter and pull Europe into it with energy. It's just not something that's going to end well.
Well, do you think, since we've seen the British lead general declare war, he militarized the entire British army and basically state that they are at war with Russia because, their media has said that Putin was going to drop atomic bombs on them that create tsunamis, wipe out the entire British Isles. All the lies coming out of the Brits built up to them basically mobilizing, which is a sign of declaring war. But of course, they're supposed to do that with NATO, not by themselves, but they did it by themselves. Do you think that Biden or King Chucky, King Charles, or the European Union are going to actually declare war against Russia, World War III?
Um, my feeling is from being raised since the 60s on this, a lot of things from my dad and Nostradamus and predictions and even Rudolf Steiner, Edgar Casey, so many things I've heard of for the last 50 years. It was always 50 years ago that China was going to march through Kyrgyzstan and Ukraine and right into Europe in 6 days with 200 million man army. You can see that manifesting today with the lack of food and water, clean water in China. So even though things may appear to be Russia, like the Second World War, did opposing countries, beware of the red dragon. And I think that it looks like it's appearing because it's not Russia that will do it. It would be China that moves right across into Ukraine, into Europe. And whether that time is now, it just looks like it is. So I would be very wary. I don't think the NATO forces or Biden, I think they want to be the victim. I think they want to be attacked. They're doing everything they can to draw us into war, for misdirection on their failed policies, intentional failed policies, destroying energy, economies, everything that Biden has done with the Brotherhood. We know who they are. This is a grand scheme. It's played out in 100 years ahead of time, and so I believe we're moving into the time where China will make a move, and it'll happen overnight. And I don't know if it's now. Who does? I think even in the predictions, only the Father knows. Only the time of the Father will know. So it just looks like everything's lining up intentionally, all orchestrated. None of this is random or chance for those listening. And it's not necessarily conspiracy anymore. We've now moved into the land since the aliens have been buzzing our aircraft carriers off of Virginia by the thousands. We've moved into the place where things are no longer conspiracy. They're now agenda. It's just we're in the agenda, and who is in these agendas. They're being played out. No longer do we doubt all the things we doubt as I'm 65 as we grew up, thinking we had to doubt this and doubt that. Oh, it's all real. The spying on Trump, the Stasi working through the FBI, everything is just totalitarianism, American style.
So true. And alliances are what causes war in the past. Treaties for peace cause war. Oh, and now as we were talking yesterday, we're in the post-truth age. We're into the age of falsehood politics. We're in the age where, as you pointed out yesterday, everything is a lie. There's nothing. Anywhere you look, if someone's telling you something, it's probably a lie. Now, those are my words for what you said. But so look at the alliances, and you just mentioned China and Russia. When they decided to act like they were going to go to war with Putin over Zelenskyville, which is he is the most ridiculous politician in human history. He's a porno star. He's an actor. He's pathetic, and the way that he's treating all of this. There's the big arms dealers meeting, and he's going to address them. He's the keynote address, so that he can do what? Every time we give him weapons, and we've now given him at least $86,000 billion, through the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and through the through the State Department, through the Department of Defense, and now another, almost $40 billion that Biden wants to send. This is ludicrous, the effort they're putting out to get us interested in this war. Now, when Putin saw that that's how serious the West is going to get, he simply after they turned off Nord Stream 1, he turned off, excuse me, after they turned off Nord Stream 2, he turned off Nord Stream 1 for repairs and isn't turning it back on, and has plunged Europe into a depression where they don't even have electricity to run their industry, their physical plants, their houses, nothing. So basically, he has crippled Europe in a way that some say will be hard to even come back. It's kind of like what happened with the pandemic.
Well, yeah, even in France, they not decommissioned, they destroyed their nuclear reactors. They're taken down and apart. They couldn't turn them on if they wanted to get electricity. But this, let's turn a little bit more towards Rudolf Steiner right here. I think this is important. It's coming to me in spirit. The sixth epoch, which will come after this epoch, in Russia, in the brotherly love and true, and not socialism isms, but true, where we will feel our brother's pain and we won't be able to walk away during these time of rights we're living in. That time will transform, and capitalism, money, mammon is been kept out of Russia for the most part, even though there's corruption in Ukraine and everywhere. The truth is, it isn't really mechanized the way it is in America and the West. And so to pollute the land, to pollute the souls from not wanting to incarnate in that time, they have brought premature socialism. The British have done this. You talk about King Charles into, and they created the first communism, as everyone knows, with Lenin. But they are looking to destroy the souls when they wait time to incarnate into Philadelphia, in the land of brotherly love, and the future, prematurely destroyed by removing the English language, the capitalism, sports, consciousness, no epic. It's prematurely bringing in something false and forcing it on us under socialism. So that land, that area, Eastern Europe over into Russia, you keep seeing almost like the forbidden zone in the Planet of the Apes, where you can't go, and it shouldn't be polluted or destroyed by the West. And that's why Putin, I believe, whether he's conscious of this or not, I doubt it, has made his move to not necessarily restore the Soviet Union, but to push back towards that line of Eastern Europe where the preparations for the sixth epoch are occurring, when the Western brotherhoods seek to turn Russia and that whole region falsely into a capitalistic, money-driven Americanization. Where it doesn't belong, through NATO. And you see those timeline videos of NATO expanding since 53. Just about every country now in Norway, Sweden, are all being gobbled up, and they were moving right towards Russia. What did NATO really mean? It's American militarized economic materialism, pure and simple.
Well said. Well said. Now you're going to get me all excited talking about Rudolf Steiner and
Well, I think it's important right now. It's so important. Politicians won't know about this, but it is really, as you know, Doug, you know this already. But sometimes when we talk, or John and I, and you talk, we kind of look at each other differently on our same thought processes, like the tree Steiner speaks about in the four Gospels, looking at different aspects of the tree, walking around it. You see the same tree in a different view. But it's so timely, because the motivation, no, first cause, the causes, the reasons can't be conspiracy, and when they're not known, they become conspiracy, because no one understands why is this being done. Why? Never mind who is doing this. Why would people want to do this with wars and the things, the treaties, the things you spoke about? Why? And the answer has been never is given by the political realm or academia. It's never given. It's only going to come through Rudolf Steiner and anthroposophy. No one's more clearer. Actually, I'm reading the Karma of Untruthfulness, Volume 1 again, because of it. But I'll give you the floor. Run with Steiner, because that's first cause. It's the reasons.
Well, you're so right. The Russian people have been held back in their development, not coming into the materialism of the West. And that has actually prepared a soul quality that Rudolf Steiner calls the mood of the Holy Grail.
Correct.
And it is, in fact, what we will build on in the next epoch. Right now, it's the Anglo-Germanic, which includes America. And we basically are moving towards our ultimate decadence. And as I always say, Biden is Nero playing his fiddle as Rome burns, because as far as I can tell, it looks as if every institution that I know of even the evil one out of the city of London, which now is going to be controlled by King Chucky. And we have now traced all of the economic predatory rat lines back to the city of London, and we can prove these things that used to be considered a conspiracy, like the Committee of 300 by John Coleman and these things. Oh no, there really is a group of about 300, but it is not what John Coleman says. It is so shocking that later on today, Michael McKibben and I are going to be revealing who actually owns pretty much all of the markets in the Western world, whether it be carbon credit markets or the New York Stock Exchange, the Chicago Commodities Exchange. So this mammon you're talking about, this impulse of the West, literally does want to destroy, even if it is, as you say, unconscious, the spiritual seed of the future. And that's what Russia is. And so the question arises because people keep telling me, "Oh no, 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 Putin's a good guy now. He's gone fully into the Russian Orthodox Church, and he's a Christian, and you see him in these churches, and he built this big, beautiful church for the for the military, but still a beautiful church. All this stuff about Putin, Putin, Putin." And then I watched a movie the other night of three wives of the oligarchs who point out that it might as well be Chicago during the mafia time. I mean, or the gangster time, because these people just kill everybody, okay? They all live under the threat of death under this mafia oligarch system. Now, that is a bastardized version of the West, okay? Bastardized capitalism. Now, the worst bastardized capitalism ever seen in history, of course, is China. And I wanted to bring China in because you mentioned the Red Dragon. When they turned off the oil to Europe, Europe said, "Aha, you see, Putin, we're going to get you." And the same day, he sold $90 billion worth of oil, which is more than he sells to Europe in a whole year, in one day to China. And now we see China is in a horrible condition. They say 65% down in their GDP. 66 rivers have dried up. There's going to be fantastic famine there. And you mentioned it as a solution to China. And so when Russia and China, they're both there, how is that going to impact us right now? And are they any part of King Chucky and Klaus Schwab and Prince Bernhard of Netherlands, WEF, or like our friend calls them, the WEFers, the World Economic Forum people? Is Putin was trained by them? Is he playing out some scenario for them? And what about China? President Xi is they're talking about kicking out Putin, right? You hear it in the news all the time. They're talking about, and have been for a number of years, President Xi in China has failed in his 5-year plan, and they're thinking about offing him. How is this going to play into the desire for them to get one world currency through cryptocurrency, one identification chip in your body in any way, transhuman way that they can? How is this really going to play in with Russia and China? Are they going for this game?
Well, I'm going to tell you things you already know. So to answer your question, and it's funny for the listeners out there, the broad information and data and knowledge and wisdom that comes from anthroposophy and Rudolf Steiner over decades works on you so in such a strange way that answers to questions in mundane life really generate, you can get to the basis of the answers. But if we look again, I'll repeat myself, at the 100-year plan, as Steiner speaks about the brotherhoods, as well as the Jesuits and other groups, how they work, and you look at it, you then see, number one, here's a fact: the yellow race is ending. This is not against Asians, but it's burning. A star burns bright before it burns out, and it's expanding not only through people, but through spreading across the earth as the red race had run its course. Again, this isn't racism. These are things that won't look like it to many people of science, but there's an expansion. So in this 100-year plan of I'll call them the bad guys, the brotherhoods, and then the hierarchies, if you look at it differently from satellite and look down on the earth, certain things that look like they could be the enemy actually are rolling out the will of the constellations in the heavens, the hierarchies, in a very strange way. So you have people sometimes on the good side. I hate to even use the word good, but what we would think in our world looking at it like an ant instead of from a satellite, that that this isn't helpful, or in what I believe, and I think you'll agree, is that these brotherhoods, they can see the future and they game it. You see them gaming it with what's coming with true brotherly love, not socialism, and bringing it prematurely into our time, turning men into girls, removing the language, words don't have any meaning, eroding everything for our time that still has to work itself out for 1,000 years on the consciousness soul, prematurely bringing a false brotherly love and making it forced mandate. You're going to mandate charity. You're going to give your money because I told you. That's not brotherly love. That's totalitarian regime. So if you look at this across the earth and what's happening, this is probably the most important piece, I'll say, and then we'll put them together. And what you and I discussed this yesterday with John on the phone. I call him Mr. A. We'll call him that, or Senor A. I like Senor better. I don't want to call him his name. He's incarnated and he's here, and the atmosphere of the earth is lies, and it's conducive to his spirit. And so this is why people wouldn't, don't believe me, just listen and think about it. Don't believe, you don't have to believe, but everywhere we turn are lies. The earth is completely, so as we try to find the basis of motivation of truth, of the Chinese, the Russians, everything we're speaking about, we have to remember that what we're hearing, what we're seeing, never mind is illusion and Maya, it is complete lies. Every level of lie, layer of lie. So how do we get back to the truth of what's really happening? This is where we put the questions to Christ. We individually have to put these questions and sleep on them, as you do, and John and many people we know, and put them directly to Christ, from the smallest thing in our lives to the biggest things. And what I feel is that the public needs to, again, according to Rudolf Steiner, become conscious. The only defense against the incarnation of Mr. A is the consciousness of his being, how he works. And the consciousness soul, your individual conscious through hypnosis, they will tell you the critical faculty is very powerful. And it will, once it's conscious of something, it can then put it in its place. This is the thing Mr. A does not want during his carnation, us to recognize him, us to recognize his activities, where they're benevolent, and where he moves outside of his realm and they become malevolent. So the consciousness of powers, you can call him Satan, you can call it what you want, not out of some type of a superstition, but actually the world conception of how this works with Lucifer incarnating in China 2,000 years before Christ, Christ in the Middle East, and Mr. A, we'll call him here in America, in the West, bringing something that's a gift to mankind, but it's only a gift if we understand it. And so the premise of everything we're going to talk about and have talked about have to go back to Christ, the Lord of Karma. He puts the karma, and this is why they're doing what they do. They want to refute karma. The greatest enemy of Mr. A is karma, from the gods, from the heavens, from abortions where children aren't born, bringing in their deeds with their associates that they're going to grow with and family members, to confusing the two angels. When yours and I meet, Doug, we meet, and with our angels, our guardian angels, have a meeting before we meet, before we do things. All of that people wouldn't believe, but it actually is a confusion and a destruction of karma. So there's nothing but chaos, apathy, and then degradation into instinctive behavior and survival. This is what really is the enemy right now of the world, that we're not conscious of a true world conception, the beings and the powers that are working here. And then how do they work through Russia? Through the puppet of British and through America or through China. Every one of these answers we'll get into, but we have to remember that we cannot solve these riddles unless we really dwell and ask Christ the questions and put it to him through our guardian angel, and wait for a response.
Well said. Well said. Boy, now I know how people feel listening to me. Because when you talk out of anthroposophy, it's so profound that you have to literally think about these things and let them, as you said, sleep on them, dwell on them, live with them. Like yourself, I've been, like John, involved for, I don't know, 40, 50 years. trying to study these things, and it's basically you've never studied Rudolf Steiner. You're studying Rudolf Steiner. You're always in the active process of it because you can't comprehend all of it. And what he has said is utterly profound, and what you've just described is wonderful. I'm going to point out that your reference to Mr. A is to Ahriman, who Rudolf Steiner uses a Persian name for the god of for the being that Goethe called Mephistopheles, or the Bible calls Satan. But on the other hand, there's another being called Lucifer. So we're in the middle with Christ in our heart, but there's two beings trying to rip us apart. One take us out of our body and one take us too far in. The one, since 1840, as you know, because you're reading the Karma of Untruthfulness, in 1840, materialism set in as a worldview that became literally the religion of science. And now we believe in science. Well, really? Hubble telescope, when it got put up there, changed every single idea of astrophysics. Nobody mentioned that the previous ones were just silly theories, and no one pointed fingers at the previous theories. And now we have the Webb telescope up there, and every single astrophysical theory has been flushed down the toilet, and no one pointed out that we were living in all those lies. No one's going to point out that they were lies. And so we have the father of lies in two fashions, speaking in each of our ears at all times. And if we don't listen to the heart and stay centered, then we're just going to be lost, because in this age, we need the gift of discernment. Because if you don't have discernment, you may be eating and drinking poison. You may be around poisonous, toxic people. You may be listening to the mainstream media, which is silently and subliminally modifying the way you think, whether you like it or not. And so we live in an age, and you pointed this out earlier in an illusion that basically I would add to that. Evil is here now because the possibilities for good are the greatest now. Evil rises up to challenge us, and we are in a battle with evil. And if you're not in a battle, then you're moving backwards. If you don't see the evil, and if it isn't impinging upon you, then you're not awake, and you need to get a couple brain neurons and rub them together and see if you can look around, because evil is everywhere now. And it's the opposite of whatever it is you're being told. But at the same time, we have exactly what you pointed out, the ability to directly go to the spiritual world and ask Christ through our heart, and have the intercession of all these other spiritual beings who are anxious for us to spiritually evolve, because when we spiritually evolve, we feed them. It's their food. And that's what people forget. In the darkest hour, some of the greatest things of light and love were created by human beings as a response to that darkness. And that's a sad thing to say. It's kind of like that old injunction, you're cursed to live in an interesting time, or, these are the best of times, these are the worst of times. Yes, everyone says that. We're in the apocalypse, it looks like. We're in the war of all against all. But you pointed out, and really that's the answer to all the questions that we would ask you. but that's the spiritual insight. And so if people can get that,
well, the other thing is what you mentioned about what we're reading and hearing. Rudolf Steiner, I forget where. It's been too many decades, and I didn't note it down, but somewhere, and you'll agree that the threshold is the news media. When you're at the threshold, the guardian of the threshold, the lies, all the things. It's there for you to overcome in fear, in consciousness, and without. It's very hard for people not to. And I have to give a hand to the Trumpers, to the MAGA world, and the Tea Party beforehand. But that's who they were. There's always been the conservative groups, and the fact that they have been able to hold their guns and not use their guns, and not go crazy after being baited by the news media and the president in front of, in Philadelphia two weeks ago. They're not going to be moved. Their guns are for defense, and they're the last stand if the country blows up. But they're being baited and tempted to do bad things in retaliation. So it really is a rite of initiation that half this country is going through right now, where they're being tempted, tormented, lied to, and they have to look at it can't look away. Anyone who owns a gun and firearm training, even for self-defense, knows how safety is so important, and not to be emotional is so important. That doesn't mean you don't have zeal, like Jesus had in the temple, but it really is trying to watch them grooming our children now to turn them into sexual deviants, where that is no longer a word. The word's deviant is no longer used in the future, and it's just choice and it's love. And if you don't want your children to experience sex in any form at any age, then you're a hater, and you're a Christian hater. So we're moving that way, and we're moving towards the way where Christ will be completely written out of history, as Steiner says, so that we can, in the future or now, find him in vision. So the times of, it's kind of funny, it's like the science you spoke about, the times of faith, although faith is so important, we're moving into the time of vision where we're going to we must open our eyes to see, which means to know and understand, versus just to believe blindly. And this is why right away our religions have been taken away from us. The media has been taken away. There's no trust. You can't rely or trust anything you see. Academia, big tech, Wall Street, every authoritative group and industry has been removed, and we're all left alone to find through Christ. And if you don't believe in Christ, then find yourself a guru or something to believe in, but you must open your eyes to the information about reality, which is called truth, and the spiritual world, which is the basis for all reality. And if you don't want to do that, you'll be forced and divided into the husks, and to go instinctive and become animal men in the future. And you can't stay lukewarm. You must. And how do you do this? Anything you can do to try to seek. And I sent you something this morning. I read in Karma of Untruthfulness about the truth, why people don't want to know about the truth. They don't have a zeal to want to know the truth, which is impeding their spiritual development. And what is spiritual development? It's becoming a God eventually, by becoming conscious, tolerate, understand, love, grow, and be able to command thoughts and consciously, without drugs, without opium, without opioids, without alcohol. I mean, look at not only the lies, we're being completely inundated with illegal and legal drugs are worse than illegal drugs, and alcohol. Everyone is becoming stupefied. So the time of the consciousness soul is missed by people. They're not conscious. They're in a semi-state of consciousness. They feel good because the drugs and these beings that come through the drugs into them seduce them into a sleep state, and they're no longer participating in reality. They're nummy, and they're mummified while they're living. And so that is what's happening. We're all being divided. I think very few are going to make the grade. Our job is to take this, a few of us unknowns that have to lead people. And that's what you and John are doing, and others. I've been doing it in the political realm to no good effect, because it doesn't matter anymore. But if we don't wake up to vision of Christ, vision of truth, we leave it up to sound bites, measure, number, and weight of science. As you said, science that next year they'll just remove everything that they taught us and replace it with something new, and never say, I'm sorry we taught you these lies, and we're sorry if they affected your reality. But listen to us now. Try this new drug.
Boy, you are just nailing it today, Joe. I'm glad it's early in the morning, so I have the rest of the day to think about this stuff, because, you are a spiritual scientist, and you have been struggling with this with your family. I don't hardly know any Americans whose family was involved in studying this stuff for decades and, doing something. And you're a guy who does stuff. So people might not know this about you, but you're not only a spiritual scientist, you are a producer, a director. You're into drama, you're into movies, you've ran for political office in Connecticut. You've been interviewed on the mainstream media more times than I can count. Every time they turn around, whoever 10,000 million people there, but who do they interview? Joe Visconti. Every friggin' time. I don't know how you do that. But you are so popular, it's ridiculous. You have tried to take your spiritual science, put it into action, politically to try to do the right thing. But now you full well know, as you just kind of alluded to, that all elections are determined by the software and the machines, and somebody's making those selections. Those aren't elections, and the fraud we saw in the last election was unspeakable. I mean, just what happened in Pennsylvania or choose any state. What happened here in our own Michigan was the most despicable thing. How could anyone ever vote again? How could you ever believe that anyone really, their vote ever counts when you saw what happened in Detroit, Michigan during, the last few elections? And now you have Joe Biden saying he's going to go out to war in the next election because the Republicans are basically, especially MAGA, they are domestic terrorists, and they're going to destroy the election, though he stole himself, Biden, the fake Biden, Hayden Biden stole the election, of course, and we all know that, and now it's just a joke. So we have a fake Chucky, the king of England, who was literally a special ed student who shouldn't be doing anything. They shouldn't allow him out on his own. They never have till now. Why would they? Now he's the king of the world. You got a Biden who would do anything that Obama whispered to him with the earphone that he has. Joe, you're going to declare World War III now. You don't like Putin. Start yelling. I mean, this guy, we are in the craziest times possible. So because you are connected to and were connected to the Trump campaign very intimately, and you know the insides and outs of all of this political stuff. Every time I talk to you, I ask you a political question and you give me an answer that blows my mind. What's going to happen with Trump?
They will pick him up. They'll indict him and they'll perp walk him. And there's nothing stopping them from doing that except for one thing. And this is the one reason that they're delaying right now. I mean, everyone in his inner circle that I'm connected with, I'm in the second circle. They've all been not arrested, but subpoenaed, phones taken. My text messages with me and candidates for U.S. Senate are in phones of people I won't mention that the FBI took. So they're able to read our strategy right now, right in Connecticut against Richard Blumenthal. They can read what we're doing and they can just leak it to the New York Times and to operatives, and there's nothing stopping them. They're doing it right now, and there's no probable cause. They're just making stuff up under a secret grand jury in Washington, D.C. We all know that. And there's nothing stopping them except for one thing. If Trump puts out a truth, because he's not on Twitter, so he's on Truth Social, and they're called truths instead of tweets. If he puts out a truth that says they're going to arrest me and perp walk me tomorrow here at this location, I'd like to see 1 million people come down to give me some support. All he has to do is that. He did that for January 6th. Come to Washington on January 6th. It's going to be wild. And you saw what happened. If he puts out that truth, this country gets lit like you've never seen. And understand this, there's only about 8 million armed soldiers in our country, National Guard, every police officer, FBI, Homeland Security, only 8 million. We have 16 million hunters by themselves. Those are men that 30-06s with scopes that can take down deer out in Michigan, or wherever you live. Everywhere in this country. They've killed. You've got veterans. You've got 75 million more armed to the teeth that can shoot and are stocked. You've got 100 million men who don't want to fight and kill. But law enforcement and the U.S. Army can't hold a candle to what will come down. They know the numbers. They know the people. What they don't know is how far they can push before there's bloodshed. Because if this does happen, they've already surrounded Mar-a-Lago. People came out to support him. But if he puts a truth and says, do this, and I'm doing the show today and another one, we'll talk about this, because the FBI had been to my house after January 6th. I could care less if they arrested me for nothing. You're prepared. This is like those times where you can be arrested for doing nothing now. They came to my house. I was there on January 6th. I never went in the building. I told them, go talk to my lawyer. They can come back and put me in jail. I lost weight. I worked out. I said, I got ready for prison because I could be arrested just like you see in the old stories in Rome and civilizations where you did nothing wrong. That does not matter. It's the perception that we're going to create on TV. have at it. I'm 65. It'd be the proudest thing I ever did in my life because it did nothing wrong except for the right to freely assemble. But that's where we are. So it takes nothing for them to pick him up. And if they don't now or later, it will only be because of the truth he will put out, and he will put it out. And you'll have 1 million armed men on motorcycles and SUVs anywhere he tells them to go. That's about to go down now.
Wow. Okay. How about DeSantis? And some say Candace Owen will be his vice presidential candidate, that he'll run for president. What do you think?
No, they'll take him out. What they're doing to Trump, while they're going in his whole circle, I won't mention people's names, but you've read them in the papers. They're all friends of mine. I've worked with them all before. We communicate all the time. Good people. They're just fishing for information. Everyone who has Trump's phone number, they're grabbing their phones right now to try to see if Trump texted to some things to organize, just so they can fabricate. So why is that important? Because they would like to take those people and have them stand down and not be prepared for 60 days to make an announcement that Trump is running for president. He doesn't have anyone with him to work with him. They're all afraid, and they're also investigating a super PAC, Save America, so they can freeze his assets. No money, no crew. You're not doing that construction project right now. No financing and no construction guys will work for you. You can't run for president. DeSantis he's too smart. They'll take him out in a week. Even how good he is. I believe that DeSantis is going to stay clear, wait for the dust to settle. He's only 42. Wait another 4 years, no matter what goes down, and come in as a savior for the party after either the country has completely collapsed, or events have gone so far that there's no more democracy or democratic process. He's too smart to get involved in this shit show, because 75 million Americans are supporting Trump, not because he's Donald Trump, but because he's doing what they know needs to be done. He's an outsider bringing in his own bull in a China shop way the changes that have to be done to keep the epoch of the consciousness soul, business, sports, knowledge, education, all the stuff. That's the time we're living in. It's got a long way to go yet, with 3,500 before we switch to the next epoch. So it's a long way to go, and he represents that, like it or not, with all the warts and all. That's what he represents. And when he's gone, and they won't take him out, even if they arrest him and perp walk him. He's running for president. It's just going to get very dangerous in America. It's going to be very dangerous to live in America very soon, everywhere. And that's what the Democrats want.
Okay. Is the reset coming? Is the whole thing going to come crashing down here in America? The stock market, our currency, so on and so forth? Some say the reset is scheduled. It's been announced by
I
Klaus
think
Schwab.
Everything will happen. Steiner actually read in Karma of Untruthfulness this morning about the truth and how sometimes it's there, and it's not that it's not untrue, but it's not applicable. So, and it was really wild. I should have read that to you guys, but applicable. The truth sometimes loses its meaning and ability to be applicable in life. And so they'll always phase in things. The bankers will never allow follow the money, follow the loan documents of all lending, and that will tell you what they can and cannot do. And those who own it will never, whoever they are, however it's played, because it's all illusion, it's all mammon anyway, and it's all fraud. But the fraud actually gets run by the documents that are loan documents that we never get to see, that the Treasury signs. And China's the smallest player of our debt anyway. I think 72 to 78% of our debt is owned by us in the stock Federal Reserve. So China doesn't have as much as we think. England owns a bigger portion of us. But the loan documents, I believe, will just transform us. They're going to take the time. I'll get a little weird on you here, but they're going to take the time to make sure they can implant devices in us. That's generation coming up soon. It started with the tattoos, where people were, hey, it's cool, it's fun, tattoo, put needles in your skin. Then it turned over to piercing and put a hole in your nose and your ear. And now it's moved to inject yourself with something you have no idea what it is, stick an injection in your arm. So they've done talk about threefold order. They've done threefolding on the implanting into the human being, preparing the human. And our generation is on its way out. 10 years, we won't even be, I'm 65. I'll just be walking with a cane like you. Hopefully not, but we're on our way out. So they're grooming the young ones to be able to take this. Why is that important? That's where the digitalization and the really suppression of conscious thinking and we're numbers and programming. And then, as we've talked about, the abstract thinking is gone, and people just have to choose the artificial intelligence, because cosmic intelligence isn't here, human intelligence isn't here for them. And so the programming time and the digitization of all these things, it's coming, will phase in. It doesn't mean it's not 5 years from now or 4 years, because things are moving so quick, but they definitely need to be able to roll this out in function of implants. And that's not crazy anymore. People will do it. First generation people will do it, like first generation of iPhones or whatever. And then the second generation, the third, oh, this is cool. Then it's in the optic eye. They'll do that with a lens and the implant. It's here. The technology is here already. They're just phasing it in. So to do the money alone without the rest of the human being involved, they're not going to get ahead of themselves. This is all phased in. This is what the brotherhoods are all about. It's broken, it's fragmented, it's separated. It's not conspiracy, it's an agenda. And those on the boards that sit on everybody's boards, and you and John talk about it, and your American intelligence, everybody's sitting on everybody's boards. So it's not like all the major corporations don't know. It's just something, you don't tell the kids when they're playing in front of the Christmas tree that you and your wife are going to go have sex after. You don't talk about that. They don't talk about it in front of the children, in front of the masses. So it's something that's, again, that 100-year plan. Steiner speaks about this, where they're rolling it out. Your only ability is to understand it through vision. And what is spiritual vision? That's the best question in the world, because that word is so ruined. Spiritual, it means what? It means life with consciousness beyond the organic process. Life and consciousness beyond the organic process is what spiritual is. We go on, even if the organic process for this vehicle is gone, we still develop, and this is what they want to stop human beings from developing the ability to think without a body, to be able to be awake when they're dead, awake at night, and your dreams have become clear through all of Steiner's exercises, and you start to participate in your own karma and take it over, so that you can do what? You can reduce it as quick as possible through Christ, and with Christ make it as most effective to as many human beings. That's what Christ does. He takes our karma, if we work with him, to make it affect positively all of humanity. It's the only way we get to Jupiter, and we get to Venus, and then Vulcan. This all has to happen. These other forces, as you know, are looking to stupefy us, remove the ability to develop these higher aspects of ourselves where we can think without a brain.
You have one of the most profound deliveries of anthroposophy, because it's so applicable to there's that word again. It's so applicable to our lives, and it really is. So I'm going to ask you one more question before we close out today, and that's just say thank you for these profound insights. And if people, I hope they go back and re-listen to this and make a few notes and think about these things, because you nailed it when you said they're trying to take away the ability to understand karma. Well, then that immediately obliterates reincarnation, life after death, life before birth, everything. It obliterates the economy of love. It obliterates everything. Just if you say there's no karma, you get to do whatever you want. Well, that's who King Chucky is. King Chucky and the British monarchy, I now name because they are German, and they were so into Hitler and fascism and actually imperialism before that. So what is going to happen with King Chucky, the Führer of the British Fourth Reich, as I like to call him? Do you predict anything's going to happen with what King Charles is going to do?
I'm tainted by so many predictions I've heard through my mom and dad since the 60s, way before they met Steiner's work. And a few things always rang true for me. And that would be that he wouldn't be king, and if he was, it would be short-lived. And again, for the audience may not know this, we're dealing with kings and queens again. This is something that was through the bloodlines of the Archangel Gabriel before 1879. Their time has passed. It's no longer the bloodline after Michael. Now it's in the spirit with Christ. And so this old king and queen world during the 340 years of the Archangel Gabriel reign that ended in 1879 is continuing 130 years past its time to have an influence and a power to basically mesmerize, captivate, and hypnotize, as well as use misdirection on the general public. All of it is used for that, because people do know the king and queen, and it's in your fairy tales, it's in your myths, it's part of our higher being, and you should do a show on that, the kings and the queens and how they work with all of the, I won't get into it now, the chemical wedding, all of it, to show why in the root of us we still love it, even though Gabriel's epoch has ended, and we're now to move into the spirit versus the bloodline. Still, there's something about each one of us on our male, female components and all that, and which is why some semblance of truth is in there, captivating human beings. But I don't think his time will last long. If it's much, I think William will be king, and I think he's a complete. They're going to hold him off because he's a complete different person. I think he'll bring a positive thing in the future as he wakens to what he sees going on. If they haven't initiated him into some of these things already, which they probably haven't. They've got him the customs, but I don't think they let him in the inner circle yet.
Joe, talking to you is better than drinking 3 cups of coffee. I'm going to go talk with Tyler now and say, look, we need to have more conversations with this guy. I mean, he's on fire, and you are actually maybe more. I think it's because you've been involved in politics. You're brave. You say things that most people are not brave enough to think, let alone to say. So I want to thank you, and I can't believe we haven't done this before. Thank you for this kitchen conversation. Let's have another one soon, and I salute your work. Every time I talk to you, you tell me the great work you're doing, and it's just astounding. So
thank you for having me on, Doug.
Oh, it's a remarkable treat, and we'll do it again soon. Thank you, Joe.